Maria. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Rugby and Daventry Crematorium Joint Committee. The first item on the agenda today is the appointment of chairman. So could I please ask for nominations for chairman, please?
I'll nominate Councillor Howard Roberts.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, if you'd like to please take the chair.
Thank you, Lynn, for that.
Accept it first.
Yeah, I'll accept the position and welcome everybody to the meeting. Our next job is to appoint a vice chairman. Do we have any nominations?
I will nominate Councillor Robertson.
Do we have a seconder? On that basis, I'll second you. Any objections?
There isn't anybody else.
Right, so everybody in favour. Welcome, Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
My next job is to look at the minutes of the previous meeting. The way it's quite a long minute, so has everybody read it? And does anybody have any comments to make? Or corrections to make, rather?
Thank you, Chair. It's been, as you say, it's been a long while, and thank you to Lynn for sending a copy of the minutes, because I think we'd all probably forgotten them. And I've got no further comments, so I'll move that they are approved.
I'll certainly second that. Are we all in agreement?
Yeah.
Thank you. They're approved. Lynn, do I have to sign a copy of those now?
No, Chairman, we'll do electronic signature later on.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any apologies?
But the fact that Councillor Mrs Lomax is not with us, and there's no formal apologies, no, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest of non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. Anybody? I'll take that as a no. Pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct to councillors. I'll take that as no. And notice under section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. I think we're fully paid up for that.
That may not come across that. If you haven't paid your council tax, you can't sit on the committee. Is that what that means?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
So our next item is financial monitoring and key performance indicators for Q2 2020/21. Who's taking this item?
That will be me.
Thank you.
Okay, so you should have received a copy of the financial monitoring and KPI information for Q2.
Yes.
So if I start with the table on the left for the performance data, you can see that the number of cremations, we're doing better than the profile budget, so better than the trend. And we've had 495 cremations from April to September. We have seen an increase in the no service cremations, so we're just sort of under 7%, with 34 at no service, which means they're at a reduced price. I did notice that the budget monitoring table on the left, for some reason, the table isn't adding up properly, but the summary at the bottom is correct, and we are showing an overall surplus of 320,715, which divided between Rugby and Daventry is 160,358. Then if we have a look at the reserve table, we're showing the transfers into the reserve, which are as per what we budgeted, but we're also transferring 20,000 to the service, which is an estimate of replacing a new part for one of the cremators. So that leaves us with a balance of 45,000 in the cremator reserve and 29,105 in the cameo reserve. If we scroll down to the next page, we can see that we are currently at 61% of the market for Rugby in Daventry, and we can see that by month we were quite high in the first quarter based on previous years, and August seemed quite low than normal. So yeah, that was. Does anyone have any questions on that?
One question I have through the chair is that how much of the increase in business has been down to the virus?
We were dealing with 40% of the deceased we were taking care of were due to COVID. We can't tell you how many were due to the virus because we don't know, because a lot of the people that were dying, because the doctors weren't seeing the patients and they were just having COVID put down on their death certificates, regardless of whether they died of COVID or not. And that's just not local to here, that's across the country. The first quarter numbers were so high due to COVID. Obviously, the second quarter numbers have dropped because people that would have been naturally dying sort of now would have been, would have died of COVID earlier in the year, which is why the numbers have dropped so drastically. Numbers, we're starting to get busier again. We've started to receive COVID positive deceased again. And obviously that's just going to continue for some time now.
When it came to the temporary quarantine arrangements, did that have any significant effect? Well, it must have had some effect. So did it have any significant effect on our figures?
No, nothing at all. No, because even though people are isolating and shielding, it doesn't apply to people that are attending a funeral. And it doesn't apply to the numbers that we were taking care of either.
Yeah.
And that's working with our resilience forum, which is Coventry, Solihull and Warwickshire. So we were all working together. And although we all had an increase in numbers, none of us were actually working to capacity.
So, Chair, I'm assuming then that because the government changed the way the figures would be presented was down to the fact that doctors were saying every death was due to COVID. So
the majority.
Now we've got a new system whereby it's within 28 days of being notified of having contracted the virus that you die. So I presume that will make a difference from now on in this second phase.
We'll need to wait and see, really, because we know that even deceased that have had a post-mortem, and if they swab positive for COVID after death, then that is what is put down as their cause of death, regardless of whether it is or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. I mean, I think we should put on record our concern or condolences to all the people that went through our crematorium, and thank their relatives and for putting their trust in us for their loved ones' burial or cremation.
Yes, absolutely.
So, moving on, we've got the cremation operational update.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, from a COVID point of view, the team and I have been in every day dealing with burial and cremation. The lockdown restrictions have had no effect really on our day-to-day working lives at all. We've not had the luxury of being able to work from home. We've had a lot of abuse, a lot of verbal abuse from families, from funeral directors, which is still going on now, you know, because of the restrictions. Unfortunately, our hands are tied due to the restrictions. And, you know, as I said before, it's not local to Rugby. This is across the country. It's nationwide, the restrictions that are in place. But grief and restrictions don't go hand in hand, unfortunately. So it just makes things so much worse that grieving families have had these restrictions put upon them. But the team have been absolutely fabulous, and have carried on regardless. Legislation has changed. Sorry, that's Catherine trying to ring me again.
Do you want to?
Legislation has changed now, where anybody that has tested positive for COVID should be self-isolating, asymptomatic, symptomatic, and all of the above, are now exempt from self-isolating when it comes to coming to a funeral. Now, we knew that we were getting COVID positive people coming to services anyway, but now they're allowed to by law. So our legal team have been looking into that, and health and safety thankfully overrides everything. So our stance is that if we know that somebody is COVID positive, then we're asking for them not to go into a funeral service for a variety of reasons. You know, funerals tend to attract more people in older age groups, more vulnerable people, you know, and if somebody came to the funeral that was COVID positive and we had somebody there from a nursing home, because they're not staying away from each other, they're all still hugging and kissing and everything else that you would expect. You know, it's quite easily passed on. And then if that person took it back to a nursing home, then heaven knows what would happen. But we've got no control over that, unfortunately. We just make sure that everywhere's cleaned down after every service. The chairs are set out at 2 meters. If the families choose to move the chairs together, then that's up to them. We will just move them back after the service when we're cleaning down. But apart from that, as I say, everything is operating as normal, or as normal as possible, at the crematorium. One of the other things that I sort of mentioned in my report was the increase into the reserve fund. At the minute, we have an annual contribution of £15,000, and I'm asking that we contribute another £10,000, so £5,000 from each authority into the reserve fund, so we can use it not just for future maintenance works of the cremators, but we can use it for other necessary maintenance works in the crematorium. So, for instance, the crematorium is desperate to be redecorated internally. We need a new floor in the crematory. We need a new non-slip floor, because we haven't got one at all. The music systems in the chapels need upgrading. The webcast facility needs upgrading, and none of this is cheap. So it was to ask if you would consider an increase in £10,000 per year into our reserves.
Do you want a proposition putting forward by councillors to that effect?
Yes, please.
Well, I propose it then.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, if I can just add, I'm a little bit surprised that we haven't already got a fund for that, and it's something perhaps we should have picked up on some time ago but didn't. So yeah, I'm quite in support of that.
And I would agree
Maintenance
with
is
that.
absolutely essential.
Sorry, Chair, we do have a maintenance budget, but obviously it doesn't cover bigger expenses that we need to cover. Yeah. You know, so we want to keep our green flag and our Charter for the Bereaved gold status, and obviously if we can keep the building looking tip top, then that all goes towards it. Well, it's all about the experience for the bereaved.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't keep it up, then people aren't going to come. So exactly. It's false economy, isn't it? So yes, it's got to be maintained.
Absolutely,
absolutely. Thank you.
And indeed, can we put on record our thanks for all the staff and all the marvellous work they've done in the last few months?
Yeah.
I have a question, Lisa, if I may. when it comes to equipment for this pandemic, have we got the automatic, or rather any kind of temperature taking equipment?
No, it doesn't apply. So that doesn't apply now because COVID positive people can come to a funeral service. There's no point. Track and trace doesn't apply, and neither does temperature taking, unfortunately.
So
they're allowed,
obliged by law to let them in the building, or?
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So
I find that rather amazing,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's exempt if you come into a funeral, and that's not guidance. That is actually legislation under the Public Health Act.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Sorry, that's actually under the Public Health Act, Lisa. That just seems amazing to me that we haven't. You've got no control over that.
No, it's legislation. It's not guidance.
But on that basis, everybody's, if you like, got the infection, so you consider everybody a live case.
Exactly. So the risk assessments and the procedures that we have in place cover that, although we are now knowingly putting people at risk rather than unknowingly. Yeah. We know that any person that passed away in the community that was being cared for at home that died of COVID would have been cared for possibly by a family member more often than not. So, and that family member was still coming to the funeral. Oh, 1 second, Catherine's in the lobby. Hang on. I think she's there. Catherine?
I am.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, long last.
Well, welcome.
Good afternoon, all.
Good to see you.
Hello, Catherine.
Hello.
Right.
Well, that took some time. I'm sorry about that.
We're on item 7 at the moment.
Are we? Hang on. Right. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know whether we've got any questions to Lisa.
No, I don't think so. Thank you. Here we are. Operational update. Thank you.
Councillor Robbins.
Yeah, just an observation, Lisa. The Rotary Club that I belong to has had quite a few deaths over the last 8-10 months, unfortunately. And what we've taken to doing is, instead of actually attending the funeral, we arrive, park our cars, and we stand 2 meters apart down the drive. We make sure we get there in plenty of time so that we can actually honour our colleagues as they are driven past.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't know whether you've noticed that, or you've been aware of that. Yeah. It's perhaps something that, when people say we don't know what to do, something perhaps you can just say to them, well, why don't you line the road at 2 meter apart to make sure you keep your distance, just to honour them.
We do. I mean, we've had a lot of funerals, and that's what has been happening. The problem we get is the people that come down the drive and stand around,
yes.
trying to get rid of them. One, there's no point in them standing there once the service has gone in.
That's right. We
try and encourage the webcast facility, obviously, so people can watch it live.
Yeah.
But people tend to stand around chatting. Because we're going into lockdown again, so we're not going to be allowing anybody to come and stand actually in the crematorium grounds, but they can stand the other side of the barrier.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing it again like that from Thursday, which we started in March and went through to July, I think. And then we were allowing people down the drive. We've done it for lots and lots of funerals. We haven't got an issue with it. The problem is that people don't social distance. With the best intention of the world, they do not social distance. And it's quite difficult when you then ask them to leave, because we don't want them in the grounds for 40 minutes while the family are in chapel and then going into the flower court because they want to meet the family out of the flower court, because then we've got the next funeral coming in.
Yes.
And it just causes chaos. But people are people, and they're very blinkered when it comes to funerals. And, it's only about them and their friends and family. They don't consider anybody else and the operational effects that are going on, which is a shame. But we've had people that have had picnics in the car park because they can't have a wake, and we have to kick them out. you know, it's been fun. It's probably the best description.
It sounds like you've had some real problems.
We have had a lot of problems, but you know, it's part and parcel. As I say, people think that, I don't know, with all the shielding and lockdown and everything else that's been going on, you know, it doesn't help now that the legislation has changed to say that it's exempt for funerals, and people are jumping on that.
Lisa, can I ask you, have you had any conversations with other crematoriums and seen what they're doing?
Yeah, we're all in the same boat, Chair.
Yeah.
We're all having exactly the same problems. Some crematoria have reduced their, have increased numbers by reducing the space in between seating. So like Canley, for instance, in Coventry, they've gone down to 1 metre, but they were put under horrendous pressure by the funeral directors and everybody else. Thankfully, Dan supported us and we've not bowed down to that pressure. So the guidance is still 2 metres and our chapels are still spaced at 2 metres. Yes, we can only allow 16 people, but with the lockdowns coming in again, it means that we haven't got to reduce numbers. So keep going backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
So we can stay at 16. Whereas the prems that have reduced numbers, increased numbers, are going to have to reduce again.
Yeah. So it's about being professional and consistent, isn't it?
Trying to be.
But it's difficult because you're dealing with human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments from the committee?
Yeah.
No. Can I suggest we move on?
Yeah. Can I just add one more thing, Chair? It's
You
just so
certainly
everybody's aware. Unfortunately, this year we won't be able to hold our normal remembrance service on the 11th of November or our Christmas service this year. So I just wanted you to be aware, just in case anybody asks about them, because they're normally really, really popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of us will miss them, and we'll look forward to the following year where we can attend.
Hopefully, thank you.
But thank you for that comment. So on the agenda, it says the date of the next meeting. I believe, Lynn, you will arrange this outside of the committee.
Yes, I can arrange that by email for a date in January to suit everybody.
Okay. So item 9, motion to exclude the public under section 100/A4 of the Local Government Act 1972 to consider.
So moved, Chair.
So moved. Everybody agreement?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just wait for the internet to go down.